Taj.
All right, Taj. What do you consider a hate crime against a minority?
I consider hate crime against a minority if physical harm,
Physical harm?
or property damage, anything of the sort. It can be emotional to it, but words. If you say something, say if I call you something racially inappropriate, it would be considered a crime, but you can't really have proof. But it will be mostly physically.
That's what you consider a hate crime.
Yeah.
All right. Pleasure to meet you. What's your name?
Langston.
Langston. All right, Langston. What do you consider a hate crime against a minority?
A hate crime against a minority? Well, it's basically when you don't know that much about the person, like their background, and you just like assume something, and you take it out against them.
Hello. What's your name?
Oleg.
Oleg. Yeah. All right, Oleg. What would you define as a hate crime against a minority?
Any type of physical attack, I guess verbal, something like that.
All right. What's your name?
I'm Jeff Kilroy.
Jeff Kilroy. All right. So, Jeff, what would you define as a hate crime against a minority?
Hate crime? Anything.
What's your name?
Shadeen Dixon.
Shadeen. So, Shadeen, what would you define as a hate crime against a minority?
Hate crime against minority. Well, I think police brutality is against minority because it mostly happened in the minority communities, like that guy Sean Bell. Made me think that it was just an accident against like basically a misunderstanding between the police, but I think because of his skin color and stereotypes that the situation with the
Hello?
Hi, pleasure.
What's your name?
Christy.
Christy, what would you define as a hate crime against a minority?
A hate crime against minority. I guess someone that just like curse or verbally discriminate a person that is a minority.
Obviously, your name is Melissa. What would you define as a hate crime against a minority?
A hate crime, just being discriminated just because the way you look, the way you dress, or the way you carry yourself, the way you speak. That's pretty much it. It's just a generalization of your outward appearance and what people assume.
What actions do you consider literal hate crimes against minorities?
Literal hate crimes, like beating people up, like what you see on the news sometimes, because either somebody's gay or because the way they dress, or because they said one thing that was just misled and people assumed that it meant something else.
So it's interesting that you mentioned gay people as a minority and not just ethnic minorities. So yeah, what other minorities do you think aside from just race?
Well, there have been people who have been discriminated because of their sexuality. There are discriminations among groups of people, like people who are Mexican, people who are from like Afghanistan, Iraq.
Racial discrimination, I would say, in my theory, is something when another person looks at somebody else like as if they were lower than them, lower standards, or the fact that you can never reach what they are.
Do you have any stories or have you heard anything of any type of hate crimes happening around you, against you, anyone you know?
Not to me per se, but black people, we've experienced all kind of stuff, like in the past. Me, not necessarily. I mean, I feel like I've been racially profiled. I feel like I've been just cast aside, but not necessarily.
Cast aside?
Like, I'm like the one black kid, and like there's like a whole bunch of white kids, and they're like, oh, what's up? And they're trying to act a certain type of way.
Like so stand out usually.
Yeah.
Well, I've been like in a hate crime. Well, not a hate crime, but I've been discriminated against. It happened in like Best Buy, and I was actually looking at the laptop because I planned on buying a laptop, and then there was this one guy next to me, and he was white, and he was white, and basically what happened was, like, he thought I was trying to steal the laptop, when actually I was just, like, looking at the color of the laptop, because I wanted a black laptop for myself. And so he came over to me, and the whole basic story was, he was like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to do that. And at first I was like, what are you talking about? And then he's like, yeah, laptops don't work like that. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm just looking at the color. And he's like, sure you are. Then he had this whole story about Barack Obama and stuff like that. And then you realize that he was getting all racial. And I was like, you know what? I could have gotten angry at him, but I didn't. And I decided to, like, take my problems, and I just left. And I just, like, let the situation die down like that.
What was it that this guy said about President Obama?
No, he was just like trying to act like he was relating to me. He was like,
sympathizing?
oh, yeah, he was like, oh, I know Obama, and I have like black friends too, and I'm like, okay, whatever, it's alright.
So we have a guy racially profiling against you, and then once he sees your reaction, he's trying to sympathize with you.
You can say that.
So you think this happens pretty often? Not against your minority, but
It
minorities
happens
in general.
everywhere. Yeah.
Do you have any friends that this has happened to, or have you heard of any stories aside from your own?
Well, all I know is about me. My friends, they don't really like talk about it. They like, you know, like how teenagers joke about like racial stuff. So I guess that's like their sort of like safety blanket, you could say. Like they don't want to take it seriously. They just joke it off. So yeah. But that was my story.
All right, Langston. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
Do you have any experiences, personal, or anyone you know, or have you heard any stories about anyone being discriminated against?
When I was younger, I went to private school, and I would get teased. And I was one of 2 black kids out of the whole entire school. Well, yeah, and I was one of them. So I used to just get picked on.
So you get picked on when you were a kid?
Yeah, like 5th grade, 4th grade, 3rd grade, just because I had different colors. Yeah.
Do you think this happens often nowadays?
Less than usual, I think. Especially where we live. I think it's probably worse than in down south.
JP, wake up.
But yeah, it's pretty okay because New York is really diverse.
Have you experienced any, or have you been the witness of any hate crimes against a minority? Have you heard any stories, friends, people you know, the news that you want to share with us?
Well, I heard some really messed up story about the police doing something, but for some, like, I guess I was kind of discriminated at some point because for some reason everyone thought I was Jewish or whatever.
And you're not?
No.
Would you mind sharing that a little bit? Like,
I don't
the
know.
whole scene?
Well, this happened when I was in like elementary school, so I guess the kids just didn't know any better. So.
Do you know any experiences, personal experience, anyone you know around you that you've heard, any stories have to do with any hate crimes against minorities?
I had a problem with discrimination because of where I was and what I was doing. I wasn't doing something wrong, but I had a job, and it was for a church. It was a seasonal job for summer youth. And the church had a group of us, kids, handing out flyers for the church. And it was during the summertime, so we were all hot because we were standing out in the sun. So we went and we sat down, and these detectives, they just came up around us and said, oh, what are you guys doing? We said, we're handing out flyers for our job. We're summer youth. And they said, oh, well, we're going to have to search you. And we all just looked at each other, and it was just like, okay. And it was like, do you have any ID for your job? We said, we do have IDs, but we don't have our bags. They're at the church where we work. So they said, okay, so we're going to have to search you. So a female officer searched me. Well, she checked my pants. She opened up my Blistex container to see if it had any illegal content in it, but it was just Blistex. And after that, they just let us go.
And this stuff happened in broad daylight. You guys specified that you were doing something for church, and
it was in the
these
summertime.
officers still decided to search you as if you were criminals.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
So, do you have a story that you would like to share? Were you ever racially discriminated?
I mean, as a child, I never felt it. Not as much. So, but lately, I have actually. After I got into the working environment, you come across a lot of customers who still have the view on things. They still think that because you are a different skin tone or something else, that you can never classify them. You can never reach the goals that they've reached. So they feel it's their spot, but they have the free will to speak to us the way they choose to, and they just treat us like that.
Have you heard any stories, experienced it? Do you know anyone who has?
I personally haven't experienced it, but I'm sure plenty of people around school have, because people don't think when they some of the things they say when they're having a good time playing video games out there.
So any other places where hate crimes against minorities happen on a usual basis?
I don't know.
Not just as students, but as New Yorkers in general.
New Yorkers, I'd say pretty much anywhere. Sometimes walking down the street, you hear somebody bumps into somebody, say the wrong thing, not thinking, they get angry.
Do you know of any? Have you ever had an experience, or do you know anyone close to you who has any stories you might want to share with us that have to do with hate crime against a minority, any minority? Really?
One person, when he was like in high school, he got caught up in with cops because he said that, well, the cops, it was basically his stubbornness and cops' authority. They basically told him to move out,
Move
to
out of the way?
Yeah. And I guess my cousin took it wrong because, or the cops was just basically, because it was just in a store, so it just really
So the cops are just being rude,
Mhm.
something like
And
that.
my cousin didn't really take it that well, so he got arrested for that.
I'm guessing your cousin, he's black? Alright, so he does pertain to a minority. Probably took it the right way.
Yeah.
Do you think this happens often? Nowadays?
Nowadays, I think there's like laws and basically help police to kind of check that, so maybe not as much as it used to.
Consider that students our age or even younger are usually educated when it comes to minorities, how they should be treated, or how you should act against the minority.
Hell no, they have no idea.
What do you think? What do you think plays a role in educating, students about it? Just the government, schools, parents.
I think parents are the ones that should do it because kids tend to get a little bored in school. So they might not even really pay attention or just consider this a boring lesson, so they'll probably ignore it.
So what measurements do you think parents should take to educate their kids about minorities?
Talk to them about it more or less. I know that sounds like a cliche answer, but that's what I think.
Yes, you think parents should talk to their kids about minorities, explain to them, there's a lot of ethnicities
I
around.
personally don't care. I personally I don't believe the whole minority. I don't believe the whole minority thing. We're all humans. The only thing that's different is the amount of melanin we have in our skin.
Consider that, people in general, like, the whole society, you think that we're educated when it comes to minorities?
I think so.
Yeah, you think everyone,
I think most people are educated. They just don't choose to use that education.
so you consider that these hate crimes against minorities usually happen
Sometimes ignorance.
on purpose?
I wouldn't say on purpose. They just don't think when in this situation.